I am a notorious pantser. And you know what? I'm starting to realize maybe that's not a good thing. It is currently the third week of Preptober, and this week I'm going to be tackling plotting my book, arguably the most important aspect to Preptober, understanding what exactly I am trying to write. Now, when it comes to plotting techniques, there's a lot of different ideas out there, and I feel like there's more popping up every single day. And I have had a very bad track record of being a pantser, and because of that, I have an idea for the beginning of the book and then the end of the book, and by the time we get to the middle of the book, I have no idea where this is going and I give up. So with me trying to plan, write, edit, and publish a book in 4 months, I know I need to have more of a detailed plot when I go about writing my book next month. And so I thought, what better way to plan out my novel than to try 5 of the arguably most popular and well-known plotting techniques out there. So I'm going to be spending a full day on each of these techniques, and the first one is called mind mapping. This is an example of mind mapping. I believe this is the story Red Riding Hood. They just took a fairy tale, and the whole point of this plotting technique is to say, okay, here's like the central idea, title of the book, etc. And then we're going to break out and just jot down different ideas and maybe lines between them to talk about connections. You might have a line going up to setting, and then you might have like 5 small lines breaking away from there and go, okay, here are the few settings. You might do the same thing with characters, and I will link everything I talk about in the description if you want to see a full example of it and more of the words talking about these different plotting techniques. So the second plotting technique is perhaps the most well-known, and that is the 3-act structure. This is a diagram. You have the inciting incident. This is what causes your character to jump into the fray. You know, in Harry Potter, it is the letter arriving from Hogwarts. And wow, Harry needs to decide, do I want to go to Hogwarts or not? And of course the answer is yes, because who wouldn't want to go to Hogwarts? Pretty basic. This next one is one that I had never heard of before, but it is associated with NaNoWriMo. This one is very interesting, and it's called the Jot Bin Pants plotting technique. So the jot part is basically brainstorming ideas. So you're going to put down ideas for your book. It may be associated with characters. It may be associated with the murder mystery aspect. It may be associated with historical stuff that you want to try to get into the book. And then the second step of this plotting technique is to bin everything. Use elements of story structure to put all your ideas into. So let's say you have a bin that is on characters, and you have put all your brainstorming ideas about characters in that bin. You have an possibly infinite amount of bins, I would guess. You could have as many as you want or as little as you want. The third one is pants, and that is be guided by your outline. So in this plotting technique, it's much more conducive to if you are a pantser, because the whole idea is that you don't want to throw everything into a cookie cutter type plot outline. You want to have freedom to explore, but you also want to have all your ideas in one place where you can easily access them. So the next method is the only method that I think feasibly you're not supposed to just take one day to do, but I am going to take one day and we'll see how that works out. And that is the snowflake method. So the snowflake method is basically where you start from the big picture and go into the details. So the first step, for example, is take an hour to write a 1-sentence synopsis for your book. And then I think the second step is to expand that 1-sentence synopsis into a 1-paragraph synopsis. And then you continue on and expand it more and more. And I think in the end, you have 20 pages or something of this synopsis. I have a feeling this will be the hardest technique. The last technique is the one perhaps I'm most familiar with because I've been a huge fan of it. And that is from Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and it's the 3-act 15-beat structure. And this book documents the details of the plotting technique. But in general, the idea is that every single plot, whether movie or book, falls into this 3-act 15-beat structure. It is a way to take the 3-act plotting technique that we're doing earlier in the week and breaking it down even further into more nuance. So for example, one of the 15 beats is the catalyst, and that could be equated to the inciting incident in the 3-act structure, where something big happens that forces the protagonist to make a decision, to decide whether to act or not act. Similar to the 3-act structure, there's also a midpoint that is kind of the turning point in the story, that things change somehow. There's also like a climax and resolution, but there's a lot more details in that. So those are the 5 plotting techniques I'm going to be doing this week. So let's start with some mind mapping on a giant sketching pad. And we are back. I'm very happy with how this turned out. As you can see, I covered up a small part because plot. Don't want to give spoilers away. But I'm very happy with how this turned out. It has also told me that I know the most about my characters and the least about the plot, because there's not that much there. This is a great thing to do when you're first plotting a novel, but I don't think it is good enough for me to necessarily want to use it as the only plotting technique. So now I think we are going to go on to the second technique, which hopefully should not take me that long. This one took me about, I'd say 3 hours about. The second one I'm going to do tomorrow, 3-act structure. So I just finished my 3-act structure. I can't really show it to you because spoilers for basically everything. However, this one I had a pretty mixed reaction to it. I think the first technique really worked well for me because it gets you to like kind of just throw down your ideas on a cool spreadsheet and just like see where the lines take you. Whereas this one, it seems a little bit generic. I can see why if you are more of a pantser writer, if you are someone who doesn't want to know that much going into the story, this plotting technique might work for you, because like you only really have to know just a few of the biggest plot points and that's about it. And I already know that for my book, so it didn't really help me with anything I didn't know, but I think it would be good if like you just want to throw down on a paper the biggest plot points and then just create what you feel like in between. So the next one we are going to be doing is the one affiliated with NaNoWriMo, and that one is, and that one is the Jot Bin Pants method. I am back, and just ignore the obnoxiously loud washer behind you, not me. So it is the end of the week, and I did not do as many updates as I should have, and that's because the second half of the week did not go as expected. So I left off when I was trying the Jot Bin Pants method from NaNoWriMo, and I DNF'd that method is the best way to describe it. I think in the middle of doing it, I just really wasn't enjoying the method. It's one thing to like throw down your ideas on a blank piece of paper and then organize them later. It's another thing to try to like put them into bins, and I think that's where the method failed for me, because I very much prefer thinking in linear fashion. So I like saying, okay, this is the scene I know I want first, and then the second scene and third scene. So I work very well in linear order. I'm not the type of person who can like write the end and then go back to the beginning and like write a random scene in the middle. That's just not me. And so I think with the Jot Bin Pants method, it's very much like that, where like you bin it and say, okay, this is one subplot and you're gonna throw everything about that subplot in a bin. And it just didn't really work out for me. Excuse you. So when I was struggling with the Jot Bin Pants method, I actually just jumped forward and did the 3 acts 15-beat structure. And I'm pretty sure it took me like a half hour to do. And then it was at that point that I decided to kind of DNF the Jot Bin Pants method. And for the last couple days of the week, I was actually just completely devoting to the snowflake method. And let me just say, I've never actually fully done the snowflake method, and I kind of love it. Which makes sense. I'm the type of person who likes to like look at the big picture and then go into the details. There's some people that are just more detailed oriented people. But to be able to look at my story from like way up above and then slowly go into more and more of the details, I think that worked the best for me. I wanted to quickly rank all these 5 plotting techniques, and I'm going to go from 5, which was kind of the worst for me, up to 1. So in number 5, this should not be a surprise, I'm going to put the Jot Bin Pants method. It might work for some people. Just for me, I think more linearly. It just doesn't work to try to put things into bins in my story because it just confuses me more. Number 4 will be the 3-act structure. I didn't necessarily dislike this plotting method. I just thought it was very general. I think it's good if you are at the very initial stages of your development. Number 3 is going to be mind mapping. This was the first time I'd ever tried mind mapping, and while I don't think it would work for me as like a later final plotting, I think it was really good for me to do in the beginning as like a way to just throw down my ideas, but in a visual way, because very much I like visual stuff where it comes to map. Number 2, I'm going to go with the 3-act 15-beat structure. I really think this is a good way to look at your overall story and really think about what is important in your story. It is easy to get bogged down in the details and not realize, hey, this is what I'm looking at. This is the theme. This is like the midpoint of the story. This is where my climax is. It's really good to look at the overall stuff, but unlike the 3-act structure, it actually has a significant amount of like big details that you need, like the B story where you're looking at, what is something that the character, the protagonist, will be experiencing after the big beginning of the book. And number 1 is the snowflake method. I did not think I would put the snowflake method up this high. I think the snowflake method is the most detailed and the most time-consuming plotting method. But if you are someone who prefers plotting, I think this is definitely the best method, because you start from looking generally at the story and then you break it down into pieces, and then you break those pieces into pieces and further on. And I only used about half of the snowflake method because I had already developed my character. Basically anything you need for your story is taken care of in this method. So it's a much more detailed method than any of the other ones, and I think maybe that's why I enjoyed it that most. I'm curious to see if you've tried any of these methods, or if while watching this video you think one or a few look interesting. If you'd like to try them, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.